Hello and welcome along to another special. It's Ben here on All for United. Look, you're going to want to get in the comments for this show and also hit a like on this video before it's even started, because I'm joined by three fantastic guests to talk about this brand new book. It's available now. The big Manchester United book of the 70s. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about going from relegation. We're going to talk about having some fantastic footballers on show and trying to get back up to the top. It was a struggle through the 70s, but some guys who don't struggle talking are going to be telling us what it's all about. Roy Kavanagh, MBE, Carl Abbott and Dave from Legends Publishing are all going to be on chatting about this fantastic book in just one moment, so make sure you stay there. Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United. Hello and welcome back to All for United. Dave from Legends Publishing, Roy Kavanagh, historian and author, and Carl Abbott, also a phenomenal author in his own right. And I've got to say, guys, just hands up to all three of you. Dave, you've got a Manchester United dream team of authors together for this incredibly published book, which is just incredible. Any United fan out there, whether you lived through the 70s or not, if you want to learn more about this fantastic football club, you've got to go and get hold of this book, The Big Manchester United Book of the 70s, forwarded by the incredible, forwarded by an absolute legend as well, may I just say, as well, in Martin Buchan, which is unreal. I've got to say, one thing that I am struggling with here, though, Roy, and I'm going to bring this over to you. I've gone back to the bit at the back, which has the wall of fan honours. Barry, thank you for putting him in on there. All for United, fifth on the list. Well, I thought you'd say we'd be top. I sent you a tenner in the post to be top.
Yeah.
I sold it out for the reprint, Ben.
I'm only joking, of course. Thank you so much for featuring us in the book. Honestly, it's an honour to be in it. And thank you for putting Barry's name in there as well. Look, just the most incredible book. Dave, let me come to you first. Tell us a bit more about this. Give us your elevator pitch on this great book, because it's got a bit of everything in there and literally covers everything of United's history through the 70s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been an incredible honour to work with Carl and Roy on this. It's the most detailed book I think I've published, and working with the names that are within this book. You know, some United fans will probably say, you know, why the 70s, or the 70s wasn't a great time, or it was a bad time for the club. But having picked the book up and flicked through it from the start to the back, you'll see it's an incredible journey, and a very different football club emerged in 1980 from the one that went in 1969-70, and it is just a remarkable transition, and the players, you know, the Laws, the Charltons, the Bests, that were still part of that early 70s team, to then morph into what I consider, and I know, as household names still, and they will be household names in every Reds home. And anyone that knows their history will know the players that are part of this, and to name the ones as well, and to remember the ones that aren't actually part of like your kind of forefront memories. Players that, you know, would have been involved in a relegation team, you know, they still are part of Man United's history, and I think it was important. We're, you know, hopefully going to do an 80s and a 90s and a noughties version of this, but to start in the 70s, when football was treasured by a lot of fans of a certain age, when it was, you know, you could rock up and buy a ticket on the turnstile, you could take 20,000 to an away game. Football was very different, and this book, I think, encapsulates a special time for the club, special time for football fans, and the ability to use photographs and memorabilia that has hardly been seen. It's hardly seen the light of day, some of this stuff. I think it's credit to Roy and Carl for putting this. I think it's a phenomenal piece of work. 400 and odd pages of just Man United golden nostalgia.
I think what I love about this book the most, Carl, is some of the memorabilia on paper. When you can go back through the match reports, you see some of the match programs, you see some of the tickets. Whose memorabilia is this? Yours and Roy's, one and two? Does this book, flicking through it, bring back so many memories for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. Maybe Roy's better explaining the programs and the like, and the collection that comes from. But a lot of the images in there, or quite a few of the images in there, are my own personal images. The photographs that my dad took, for instance, are included in that. And that was a very unusual thing in those days. Trust me, there weren't many going to away games in those days. There weren't many families. It wasn't really a family occasion, I would say. So a lot of the photographs and the like in there are from my dad and from my own programs and Roy's programs and the like. But maybe Roy will just say about where we got the rest of them from, and the guy who we're extremely grateful to, actually.
Yeah, there's we're really grateful to a guy called Tony Park. Now, Tony Park is actually also runs the Twitter account MUFC Academy, and he's a great guy to start with. And Tony did a book called The Sons of United, which covered all the youth teams and back, and all the youth games from 1952 to about 2010. And Tony has a fantastic Flickr account, and he's got some fabulous tickets and memorabilia on, which we've used where Carl and I didn't have the originals. But you're right, things such as that. I mean, I know one of the ones that's really good. It was one of Carl's. Was actually a token sheet. Because I don't know if other clubs did it. I assume they did, but certainly in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, there used to be a token in the program that you cut out, put on the token sheet, and if your team got to big games, because don't remember, as you mentioned, Ben, Dave did, that in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you just rocked up at the game at 3 o'clock on Saturday. In the 80s, we're playing so and so today, I'll go and watch them. And because the number of seats, of course, were quite minimal. I mean, United's first cantilever stand was 1965, but until then, the seating will be about 2,500. Ground held 60,000. So, things such as that. Tony Park was a tremendous help to us, and I think we've recognised that in the acknowledgements. Hopefully.
Yeah. Of course, you two are responsible for a lot of the copy in the book. There's a lot of match reports in there as well. But I want to go to the very start and your introductions, and maybe I'll start with you on this, Carl, if that's okay. You talk in there in the introduction about, and I'll read this word for word, actually. I'll put this out here because I wanted to talk about it, putting in mind what we're going through as Manchester United fans at the moment as well. As Manchester United fans, we are lucky. We are privileged to support the greatest football club in the world, and all us Reds of long standing have a multitude of unforgettable moments to look back upon. It's so easy in terms of times of turmoil, like maybe what you'd say at the moment, with fans outpouring, talking about our manager, talking about our owners, to forget how great our football club was or is. If we rewind back to the 70s, there was a very low moment, and it was called relegation. I'm just wondering, is there any words you can put together and sort of explain now do you remember how you felt back then? Do you remember how sort of maybe you're feeling now, or how you're seeing other fans feel about the current situation? And is there any reflection or words of wisdom you'd share?
Well, I think the situation, in some ways, you have to realise the game has been totally transformed, actually. I think some of the comparisons are very difficult to make, because the game as it was then and the game as it is now is changed in almost every regard. In terms of the feeling of relegation itself, Roy is probably better. I went to a fair number of games before the relegation, but I started going home and away in the second division. I was 11 at that time, and so my dad would take me at the age of 11 and onwards then from the second division years. But the way I remember it, I'll just say what my memory was in this regard. So my earliest footballing memory was the '68 Cup final when I would have been 5. European Cup final, should I say, when I would have been 5, when they won the European Cup. And all my understanding was, as a young kid, was Manchester United was the greatest football team ever in the world. And the Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, George Best were the greatest players in the world. And I was actually amazed. The first game that I actually went to, which was on my birthday in 1971, 2nd of January 1971, we drew 0-0 at home to Middlesbrough in the FA Cup. And I couldn't believe that we'd not won 10-0. Because I thought United were that good, and that's just what would happen. And in some regards, if you think about it, the fall from 1968 to 1974, when they went down, was an unbelievable decline in actual fact. It felt, to me, I couldn't understand it as a young child. I couldn't understand how that team could have stooped to those depths. But that decline in 6 years is a remarkable decline, and you know, there's a lot of reasons behind it, a lack of investment, etc., etc. Roy would say much more about it, but the decline was just, I think, almost unparalleled. I would have thought in football. How Roy felt about that, I think he might be better saying as somebody who was there throughout all of that period.
I've got to say, we spoke, didn't we, Roy, after the Liverpool game, and we spoke about how down you felt after that game, and you gave an honest assessment in terms of where that performance stood amongst other Poor United performances of the past how many years, or how many 25, 30 years. For you, though, Roy, relegation must have been a tough thing to go through as a Manchester United fan. I think, as Carl hit on there really nicely, can you describe your emotions at that time, and are the emotions, they can't be there right now, but is there any similar emotions you're seeing in the current United fans out there who are portraying that emotion towards the manager and the situation we find ourselves in?
Well, I think Cal summed it up perfectly, actually. You are talking about, I know it's 50 years, but you are talking about a total different mindset to think about, because throughout the 70s, and certainly through the 50s and 60s, I mean, I've watched them 66 years now, so through the 50s, the 60s, 70s, I always refer to it. I agree with Carl. I thought they were unbeatable because I watched the Busby Babes, and when they lost the match, you know, I'm thinking, hang on, this must have been a fiddle. They can't lose a match here. This lot, but it's just the mindset. They were the club that I landed with. I could have landed with Aberdeen. I could have landed with Aberystwyth Town. I could have landed with someone else. But they were my team. And it didn't really. And of course, I actually lived through Munich. So you can't get much worse than that. If anything, you could get any worse than that. And results are results. And you go to the game, they win. If they get beat 2-3-0 and they play rubbish, well, you know, it's still your team. And of course, come the following day, life went on. Whereas now, whoever it is, not just because it's Ollie, I'm sure it happens with Dave's team, because he's a big part of Brentford. And, you know, the criticism sometimes happening before the game, during the game, massively after the game. I mean, it's just a mismatch. I mean, it really, really is. And I'm not an old-fashioned fart, hopefully. We you know, I realise what world we're in and what years it is. You know, it is totally different because of that. So I'm going to amaze you now that relegation. I mean, Carl's point there, they won the European Cup in '68. They did not invest. So it's all right as having a go at Glazers. And I'm right up there with everyone who wished they were out. And we had, you know, more owners who actually put money into the club and kept it in the club, as opposed to taking more money out of the club for themselves. But we did not invest at all from 1968, the day we won the European Cup. And God rest his soul. And I'm not, you know, could never criticise Sir Matt Busby. But if I do make a concession to that, in a lot of ways, Matt's night was the end of May 1968. To have achieved winning the European Cup 10 years after being given the last right twice after the Munich aircraft is quite unbelievable if you think about it. And really, that probably was the night he should have gone. We appointed Wilf, and we've covered the 5 managers who were involved throughout the 70s. Wilf, Samat came back for 6 months, Franco Farrell, Tommy Dock, and Dave Sexton. But there was no investment given to Wilf whatsoever. The only player Wilf McGuinness signed was Ian Yore for 80,000 from Arsenal. And United were going downhill from, in a lot of ways, from winning the European Cup. We brought Willie Morgan in the season after, but there was just no investment. And you could actually see, when you look back now, 1970, 71, 72, the year they went down, writing it from the beginning of August till about the end of February. And I've done quite a few books and involved with a lot of writing, and great help from Carl and support with Carl, and of course in this case Dave. But that was the most depressing writing when you look at those games. I'm writing them 100 words, whatever. I'm thinking, did this really happen? Before the season started, Bobby Charlton had retired. Georgie Best was on one of his walkabouts. Dennis Law was shamelessly let go by United. An often forgotten true great Tony Dunn was given a free transfer left back, and he carried on playing for 5 or 6 years successfully with Bolton Wanderers. And to compound all that, we put Martin Buchan, who was, I can assure you, as good a defender as United had, a top class player. Tommy Dock moved him to left back. So, you're reading it. We brought Jerry Daly in, Brian Greenough come in, and I'm reading the games and I'm thinking, this was awful. And that actually brought back more emotion writing this than it did at the time. So consequently,
I know from my point of view, going through that part of that season, you would, I don't want to overdo it, but you would get depressed reading it. Seriously, it was that bad.
You're putting people off buying it.
Really. Wow.
But you know what, Dave, on that, and on what Carl and Ron just said with it, I do think that books like this, right, and for you as a publisher, that's the phenomenal purpose they serve, because we've got fans right now with their outpour on Twitter. Ollie out, Gray's out. This is the worst it's ever been. This is the worst moment for etc. You need books like this to be able to detail the emotion that clubs like Manchester United, who have a rich history of what they went through, right? And that's what this book does. It's an honest
100%,
account.
100%. And for me putting it together, I mean, obviously I could sense the decline, and it was they tried hard the season before to get relegated but failed, and when they actually did go down, I guess the plus point from that is it allows you, as long as it happens quickly and it happens in the first season of trying, which it did. United reformed and got back to the top flight straight away. It was an incredible season, reading the reports and listening to these two talk about going home and away, and the kind of like the band of brothers and sisters that used to follow United around the country, winning and taking over cities all the way around the country. And then that set United up probably for what happened next, which was, a couple of Wembley finals, challenging for the the top honours in the game again. So kind of some good came out of some misery. And you're right, it's only right that this book captures the tears as well as the triumphs.
100%, and it definitely does that really, really well. And do you know what? I'm flicking through now, and this was a part that I flicked through the other day when I put out a tweet on Twitter about toxicity in the fan base, and we've been through tougher times and we'll rise again, and reading through the 72-73 season, and it sort of feels like very unlike Manchester United when you read through it, because it's lost, drew, lost. And what I find quite interesting, you've still got the names, you've still got a Dennis Law, you've still got, you have still got names in this book. But one that I did flick over onto, and one certain performance that I do want to talk about right now, Carl, is the away defeat to Crystal Palace. On Saturday, the 16th of December. So would that have been 1992? So that was a year sorry, 1972. So that was a year before. Is that the year before? The year before. And Dave mentioned there about the writing being on the wall the season before, where United tried really hard to get relegated but didn't succeed. Doesn't that performance and that game alone show also the cycles in football? We talk about that Liverpool game at Old Trafford being the very worst United have performed, but that away game there to Palace is up there in horrendous United performances, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's two things to think about, because there's the football itself and the footballing performances, and no doubt the performances at those times, some of them were absolutely dreadful. But it was what you have to understand really is the difference though for the match going fan. And even though, what's the best way of saying it? You can still enjoy yourself. I don't think anyone enjoyed themselves who was there that day. Don't get me wrong, but you can still enjoy yourself despite not having the success that we might see today. And one of the things that I hope the book does bring out is that sheer joy of being a United fan at that time. So I think one of the key differences between that era and now is the be-all and end-all of being a United fan wasn't just simply the performance on the pitch, which is in effect what it is now. In a way, when people go to the match now, and I'm not being critical necessarily, because I, like Roy, I don't think I've witnessed the worst 90 minutes than the Liverpool game. It was just horrific. I felt ill that night watching that game. And part of the reason for that is in the 70s, we were all one. It was we. The fans, the players, the people in the club, they were all one. And almost to criticise the players was like criticising yourself. It was criticising your own family. And I think now the fragmentation, people who think of themselves as United fans in some ways, and the bile that they have for people within the club, it's horrific. And there's lots of reasons behind it. But for all the things that went wrong in the 70s, we've lost something of that feeling of unity that there was between the fans, between the players, between the people in the club, and the feeling of we when we talked about the club, which is now it's them. And I think we are them as fans to the people who run the club, that they are them as players who are in a different world. And so, yes, that performance and a lot of the performances at that time were absolutely terrible and really, that shouldn't have been allowed to get to that stage. But somehow the unity, as people would sing in those days, I'm talking too long, but as people would sing in those days, "We'll support you evermore," was something that you really felt, and was something built into every fan that was there. So there were ways of coping with that's perhaps not there these days. I'm not sure how well I put that, to be honest.
No, that was amazing, because
we've lost something, that's for sure.
No, 100%. And I think definitely during that season that United did go down, you can always count on Norwich to be worse than you, which thankfully is what happened that season. But with that togetherness, and like Carl said, loving being a United fan, that was tested though, wasn't it, Roy, during those times? Let's face it, look, there's unconditional love for our football club, of course we do. We have unconditional love for our children, but boy, do they test us. Ultimately, so did Manchester United during that time, because let's face it, top two goal scorers were Sammy McIlroy and Lou Macari with 6 goals. 6 goals. Yet fans still coming out in their numbers to back the side, even going through that. 897,000 fans in the stands in total that season. And it wasn't even like come you know, the form went bad, went all downhill. Then they showed some promise. You know, fantastic graph on here that shows from December, literally from September, when, you know, it started off bad. September got some type of, you know, oh, okay, it might pick up from here. We're not going to win the league, might pick up. Then went so downhill, and come January, it just flatlined. Absolutely flatlined, didn't it? So there was sort of no hope really at that point. So what was the atmosphere like around you in the stands? Not just you, but around you during those games and during that time?
Well, as Carl very eloquently pointed out there, again, it was our club. They were our players. And what I do find fascinating, actually, I'm not clever enough to actually convey it properly, but what I do find fascinating, you went back 12 months before that when Frank O'Farrell first came to United. And the very first game, I remember going a pre-season Watney Cup game, and they played fourth division Halifax Town away, and we had Bestlaw and Charlton, 71-2 that'll be, and we got beat 2-1 at Halifax Town. And then we went on a remarkable run. There's a great picture, Ben. Ben, there's Bestie playing at Halifax in that game. Great picture. But the first 4 months of Frank O'Farrell's reign was fantastic. They won a game at Southampton 5-2, and they wore this iconic yellow shirt and blue shorts, and they seriously looked just like Brazil. And everything was coming together. They were 5 points clear. And yet that same team virtually 12 months on lost that game 5-0 to Crystal Palace, who were actually below United in the bottom 2 or 3 on that day. And you think, you know, managers must take the rap because they're the boss. But how can players go from playing some sublime football, and I mean it was, you know, you look at 71-2 from the first game, 2-2 at Derby, I think, a great run and great displays, truly great displays, right up till about Christmas, New Year's Day. And how can they do that, you know, turn off the other way? And this is the same with the present United side in a lot of ways. You know, they've had some good. They did come second last year, whether or not you were so many points behind. There's 92 clubs in the league. If you'd have said at the start of the season your team's going to come second in the league and you're going to reach a Europa League final, which again they should have won, and you know, you just wonder. It's a psyche of the players. But that Liverpool game, the reason that really naffed me off was that on paper, we have got us on paper, and you don't win matches on paper, but on paper, we've got as good as 22 players. If you wrote 1 to 22 down of United, City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, 1 to 22, I think most teams would buy the players more on United 1 to 22.
I've just flicked through, and I've had this question anyway, and I've always wanted to ask you this question. Where were you in that photo? That's probably my favourite photo in the book. 1 second, let me bring it down.
Is that the relegation day?
The relegation photo when the fans went on the pitch in support.
Well, I'll tell you where I was. I was on K stand, right behind the goal at the scoreboard end, and we're just behind the penalty spot. And do you know, funnily enough, they say it was a pitch invasion, but there was about 2 minutes to go, and the referee blew his whistle for something, foul, free kick, whatever. And it was a common theme that the last game of the season, that fans just came on the pitch, and you know, everyone made the thing about the invasion. They were trying to get the game stopped, but if you actually look at that picture, there's no violence in that picture, is there? Really, if you look at it, it's a lot of people just going on the pitch, and
looks to be there's a lot of crimes against fashion in it.
Well, that's why I wanted to know where Roy was, Dave, so we could pick him up on
it. Yeah. Well, I was still sat in my seat in the case stand, thinking, "Blimey, we have gone down," or words to that effect.
Pass me another drink. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those seasons, but then that leads us on to the next point I want to talk about today. And obviously, people can hopefully take from that times have been tough for United in the past, and we've not even spoken about the toughest time of our history on here. But relegation, of course, on the first division was up there, and then having to play second division football, that had to be the start. And I'll come and talk to the guys about this, of United finding their way back to the top. And it was a long road. It was always going to be a long road. But, we'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, Dave, let me just come to you quickly. I love that for each season, there's a lovely 2-page spread at the very start, which basically shows you a table, shows you a graph of like league position. So you get to have a look at, people love graphs nowadays. You get to have a look at that on a graph. You also get a bit of memorabilia in there, like a match program. You get attendance details. There you go. You've got it. I've got it in front of me as well, but I didn't want to mess it up like I messed it up a second ago. I get so precious over this book. I'm worried that I'll like drop it or I'll rip it. I don't want to do anything to it. I love it. You get a squad photo, you get coaches information, etc. How important was it for you as a publisher to make sure that at the start you had a nice picture of what you're about to see reading onto the match reports?
I think this format really works. It's like it's a large A4 landscape format, which has allowed us to use what are basically landscape photographs, full page. Which then it allows you not to kind of write, have to put captions and stuff all over them. You can actually just let the photograph tell the story. So and then having a program, the league table, and the graph of how the season's panned out. I think you can read the book in 3 or 4 different ways. Then you can read it, and look at statistics and use it as a point of reference and research. You can read match reports and remember games that you were at, or kind of read it from that perspective, or just flick through the pictures, because we've been so lucky to have unearthed an archive of photographs from Colour Sport, which I think they're stunning, to be honest. And I think the format it allows the photographs to be even better than they were. I think sometimes I've got football books that other people have published where the format it confuses things. So the pictures are too small or they'll be cropped. This is how the photographer took them, and I think as well. I'm delighted that we've actually got like lots of fan pictures and things that Carl like Tottenham away. You've got this just a policeman looking at the United fans in the away end, and you've got this Tottenham shelf there. I mean, that picture would never have been seen anywhere. And there's lots of pictures of supporters. This guy here, this guy at Wembley outside with all the police there. There's a lot of photographs and a lot of stuff in this book that people will be really surprised that exists, and stuff that they just wouldn't have seen before. So, as the original question was, as a publisher, how important is it? As a publisher, you can only produce a great book if it's great content, and I don't think there could be anything better than what we've got in here.
I agree, and just off the back of my learning, like I don't tend to read books, but what I could do with this is if at first I didn't read it intently, I could flick through, gain enough information to want to go back and read more about how this happened, how that happened. For instance, of course, we're Manchester United. We dropped to the second division, Carl. Of course, we're Manchester United. We should be coming up and we should be winning the second division. And yes, we stayed at the top for most of that season, as you can see by the graphs in here. But a couple of things forgotten about that season. Villa had a bloody good year that year as well. I mean, I think it was 3 points difference, wasn't it, between United and Villa? They chased United right to the end. But also, we went on a League Cup run that season, which I think semi-finalists, we went out in the semi-final in the end from what I read. So all in all, it was a good season. United were pushed all the way. It was competitive, wasn't it? It wasn't a breeze.
No, not at all. I mean, Sunderland were the big threat. A lot of Reds will tell you that the Sunderland home game was one of the best atmospheres that they've ever seen. That seemed like a decider at the time, the Sunderland game at home, and it was far from a given that we were going to come up. I think one situation, in to recover from a bad situation, always the first thing you've got to do is recognise that there's a problem. And maybe United, although we were declining every year, we never quite admitted to ourselves that there was a problem. And relegation meant there was no doubt we had to admit to ourselves that there was a problem, and we had to do something about it. And you know, maybe, who knows, if we hadn't have suffered that fate, we would have ploughed on along the bottom for a lot longer. But it allowed us to find our level and to then really build up. And what people should always remember about that side, actually, it was an era in football when defensive football began to dominate, and Manchester United were the exception to that rule, with two wingers. When we were lucky with Willie Morgan at the start, but then as well Hill and Coppell when they came together, and we played some outstanding football, and we played the best football of anybody in the first division or the second division for those next period under Doherty until that 77 final. So it was by no means, as you say, it was Villa pushed us, Norwich, I think, the Sunderland was the other rival. It was no means guaranteed, but what you felt once the momentum started was, and what United fans said at those times was, United are back, and you did feel United had found their spirit again. Yeah. They found the swagger in the game, and the so-called United style, shall we say, that was back. And it started when we were at rock bottom, but then you really did believe again. And I think everybody could see from partway through that season we were into something. Then you got that feeling that I've only experienced a few times in the United career, when you could look and think, yeah, something's happening here. This is real, and that was the beginning of the resurrection, I suppose.
There was one thing I'd forgot actually, but when I was writing about the relegation season, I actually forgot that was the first year that it was 3 up, 3 down. So actually, United, Southampton, and Norwich went down. So of course, when we won the title in the second division, there were 3 teams up, and as Carl said, the 3 teams were United, Villa, and Norwich. But Sunderland were a top class side, and of course they won the FA Cup memorably. They beat Leeds around that time in the FA Cup, and the game with Sunderland at Old Trafford. I mean, you look at the crowd; I bet it's 60,500. I mean, that's second division game, and the atmosphere was absolutely crazy. When we played the we were actually in a rocky spell because Jim Holton broke his leg at Sheffield Wednesday. I remember going to that game, and we drew 4-4 just before Christmas. Well, no, early December rather. And there was a 2-month period where they did rock a little bit till about the end of February, when we got beat at Villa 2-0, 2-1. I remember going to that game as well. But the turning point was actually we bought Stevie Coppell outside right. Young 19-year-old lad, and Doherty put him on the subs bench because you only had one sub, and he came on against Cardiff and they won 4-0. And in the second half, I think it was 0-0 when he came on, and he made about 3 of the goals, and then the whole season turned on it. So it was really exciting, and Carl made a great point there, because if we hadn't have gone down, say we'd have signed Stuart Pearson the year before, or we'd have signed Jimmy McCalliog slightly earlier of the season, we did go down. We might not have gone down, but I've just got a feeling now we might have just plateaued at about 15, 16, seriously. And perhaps it was that balloon bursting moment and coming up, because they changed the whole philosophy of their play. 2 wingers, centre forward, attacking midfielders, classy defenders, and you had that feeling. If we let 2, we're going to win 3-2, as happened in the famous cup tie at Wolverhampton. So it was a big moment. And so whilst relegation you would not wish it on, they were lucky that they rebounded back. But you've got to look at the teams nowadays in what I would still call, the second division, third division, and fourth division, championship, first and second. there's some famous clubs down there. Portsmouth was a famous club from my youth, very famous club in my youth, and so it wasn't as big a disaster going down in the end.
Bolton's a good example for people of my generation as well. A club that I grew up seeing in the Premier League, and they're not now. By the way, sorry guys, someone's decided to start some building work, which was very kind of them, and interrupt my afternoon, which is great. Working from home is a joy, isn't it? So of course the bounce back, taken all the way, it was competitive against Villa, got a bit of a cup run going in the League Cup as well, and then the next season we went on to get to an FA Cup final and finish third in the league. And as you say, attacking football at the forefront. I think ended up only scoring one less goal than Liverpool that season, who ended up winning the league. And then it came the season after. Finally, a sixth place finish, yes, but an FA Cup. So we're getting towards the end of the 70s now, guys. And Cole, you mentioned that from the start in terms of where the football was. We had a couple of seasons where we toyed with relegation and got relegated. The bubble burst, Roy put it so wonderfully there like that. And all of a sudden, you've got Manchester United coming back, a flamboyant attacking side. What are your memories towards the end of the 70s and our rise coming back up to the top?
Well, there's a split in towards the end of the 70s because there's Doherty going after the cup final, which in a way drew a line under that period. But my memories were just one of exhilaration, going to the matches, and every match was an experience. Let's put it that way. Away games in particular. From the second division days, I was at every game pretty much home or away. And the experience of going to matches was something I'll never forget. And anybody who was going to matches in those days would never forget. Just the exhilaration of being there, the sheer chaos of it, really, the joy of it was just fantastic. But also, you mentioned we obviously lost the cup final to Southampton. We were in line for the double that season. We could very easily have done the double. We were certainly expecting we should have won the FA Cup. It was a shock that we didn't win the FA Cup in the end, but we were right on line until right near the end of the season. I don't recall ever really believing we would do it because of where we'd come from, but actually we were well placed to have done the double. And of course, after the cup final of Southampton, Doherty welcomed the Town Hall Square, should I say, was absolutely crowded the day after the cup final to welcome the players back after we'd lost. And Tommy Doherty made the promise that we'll be back. And we were back. And I used to believe these things. I used to believe in fairy tales, I think, in those days. But I think the fans did drag us back almost. It was almost ordained. And we triumphed. And that, as a fan in those days, that was as much joy for me as you'd want for the decade in some respects. And if you think of it that way, that whole decade we won one trophy, which was the FA Cup final. But cup final.
Well, forget the second division one.
Felt like enough drama for anybody, to be honest. But it changed, of course, when Sexton came in for Doherty. Things changed. Things had changed in the background in terms of the police had stepped in and the government had stepped in terms of away supporters. Mass travel became harder and the rest of it. And with Sexton came a new, I hesitate to call it style, a new type of football, should we say, from Doherty. So things, that exhilaration of Doherty had changed as well, I think. But it was in many respects. Again, I'm saying too much, but I look at myself in that period. I think I was a glory hunter. I started in the second division, and 75, 76, 77, 78, 79 was one adventure after another, actually. And then into the 80s, then there were some years when there were not so many adventures, shall we say. So it was great times for me and great times for everyone who was going. I have no doubt about that. People won't forget those times.
It's a bit like now, Roy. No consistency on the pitch, but consistency off of it in terms of the fact that week in, week out, undoubtedly the fans would be there as the heartbeat of the team. Of course, towards the end, and as you get to the latter 200s, or well, the early 200 pages of the book, you can start looking at what happened at the later stages of the 70s and United's second place finish as well, right at the back end of the 70s. Can you remember how you felt around that time, Roy? Was there hope that getting into a new decade of the 80s that the first division titles will come? Because that's where we were struggling more than anything. There was an FA Cup win in there. We're getting to finalists. I mean, fair enough. In '79, we only made third round in both cup competitions. But was there a sense of that? Do you know what? We're not that far away now.
Well, there certainly was that sense when we beat Liverpool in the '77 final, because that was a complete team. There was young players around, and you felt that Doherty would make the odd vital signing and make it happen. Dave Sexton, I don't care whether you're United, Real Madrid, or Barcelona, or whether you're Luton, QPR, or Carlisle United. I don't care who you are. It's like anything in life. You need the word luck. You really do. You can make your own luck. You can have class. You can spend all that. But I don't care what you are, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a publisher, whether you're a professor like Carl is, whether you're someone like me, an old fart now. You need luck to make.
And an MBE.
My bloody efforts, yeah. But you need that bit of luck. And Dave Sexton is pillared still by a lot of United followers. And it was only when Carl and I were actually looking at that season, the 79-80 season, when we came second. I think it was 79-80. And I said to Carl, we only missed that title by 2 points. And that was 2 points for a win, don't forget, in that season. We only missed it. And on the last day of the season, we were actually level with them. Goal difference was against us. But Carl put it much better than I did. He said, yeah, but he said, we never at any stage, and let me just remind what I said, we lost the title by 2 points. And on the last game of the season, we were level. But you never actually thought you were going to win it. But so he was unlucky there in a way. And the year before, of course, 78-9, we lost that dramatic cup final 3-2 to Arsenal. So Sexton could, and I realise could and if and but are all small words or big words, but he could actually have won the FA Cup in 79 and he could have won the league in 1980. And, he's pillared from the fact that it was a boring time or whatever. But you read Martin Buchan's forward, which is about 3,000 words. And when Martin kindly offered to do it to Carl and myself on Dave's behalf, I just glibly threw in, have you never thought of writing a book of your own, Martin? Because he's such a clever man, by the way. He wouldn't need anyone else to ghostwrite it. And he said, Roy, this forward I am doing will be the closest anybody gets to a book from me. And in it, there's some very strong points in that forward.
Can I ask you a question quickly, Roy, as you expand on that? I always struggle with his second name, Buchan or Buchan or Buchan. It's so tough. But when you look at a certain name, right, and Martin Buchan's obviously a legend of this football club.
Yeah.
When you look at the names, you have to adopt an accent when you say it. And his second name is one of those that I look at and I go, do you know what? You could be a central midfielder for the Spanish national team if you get the accent right on your second name.
Buchan.
Man, fantastic footballer, right? But there's one consistency from the season after relegation, throughout the end, from the mid to the end of the 70s. He's the captain. He's the leader of the team. How important was he to United?
Vital. Absolutely vital. And that's the point. You definitely had a leader. You knew. Carlo backed me up. I mean, throughout my time, from the very, very end bit of Johnny Carey's time, Roger Byrne, Dennis Law, Noel Campbell, even these men were real leaders. And then, of course, in later years we had the likes of Robson and Keane. They were real members, not just members of the team. They were members of the supporters. They were members of the club, and they were leaders. And Martin, and they all have different personalities, different flavors, ranting, whatever. But Buchan was, without a doubt, a marvellous leader. And he says in that forward that he feels that some of the senior players let Frank O'Farrell down badly. It's a very interesting read, I believe, about that. And he also says about Dave Sexton that, the training was interesting, they liked it. And as I've just said, you can pillar Sexton all you want, but they got beat 3-2 and they lost the league by 2 points. So it's that little bit of luck and bit of leadership.
Can I just dip in there? I think you've done a remarkable job, Roy, to get Martin to agree to do the forward, because, as you say, it paints this really broad and detailed picture of so much more. It's not just kind of like the normal forward to a book where you just kind of say the right thing, you say lots of positives. It's actually, as you say, the closest that he'll probably get to write in his biography. So for that alone, I think it's, it was just stunning to be able to put that in.
The only man, by the way, to captain a Scottish, the only man to win the Scottish and English Cup as a captain.
Says it all. Maybe we'll have to do a show on him next.
Well,
and you can teach me how to say his name properly so that it gets ingrained in my head, so I don't ever say it wrong. Sorry, Martin. Dave, let me just come over to you quickly, because you sent me answer my question. I was going to mention the foreword. I think, again, from your point of view, a couple of incredible elements about this book and a few more to hit on would be that foreword. The insight it gives any fan or any football historian as to what was happening from the captain's mindset throughout that more or less decade. And the other thing that I love, and I know we've spoken about photography, but I just want to hit on some of these points here. There's a couple of pictures in here that are really cleverly placed in terms of being able to give you a idea of the atmosphere at certain points of when managers were in charge of the club. And at the moment, we're going through this time as Manchester United fans where we question the manager, and for years we've never been comfortable with certain managers. Anyway, I think it's incredible that there's a picture here on the manager's page, the Sexton's Pistol banner, which I love, because it just goes to show how fans, the thing that always continues with fans is how they come up with different phrases to support your manager. And the other one, which is a picture I actually haven't seen, right, and it gave me shivers, was the Matt Busby waving goodbye to fans pictures. And what I mean by that being cleverly placed is obviously it's the natural place for it to go. But when you're reading through the background and then you see that picture of him waving goodbye to the fans, I feel there. Like, I feel like I'm actually there. Like, it's a high quality picture. It looks like it's been taken. Also, by the way, it doesn't. I think it probably is professionally taken, but it's professionally taken in a way that feels natural.
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. And there's loads of pictures like that in the book, but I just wanted to highlight that one.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of picked up on that, because again, I kind of go back to the format really, because that picture, we were able to kind of use all of it, that full, from the full left to full right hand side, and you can see the joy and the kind of love in the fans' faces in the background. And I think when I put that on the page and I showed Roy and Carl, I think they were kind of slightly blown away. And I think that was kind of one of the moments that we realised that how special the project was. And there's a brilliant picture of Carl on the way to Wembley with him and a coach load of ne'er-do-wells having a pee stop by the side of the road. And they've got United is magic on their sky. And going back to the Wembley banners, there was, at the time, it was almost like a competition. Whoever was in the final would come up with a poignant kind of banner. And so the Sex Pistols reference really does kind of sort of encapsulate that time period. And it's also as you go back, and we touched upon the coupons, stuff like this that fans would have kind of had at the time. Even when we get into like the reserve teams and the youth teams, and the friendlies and the tours around the world, we've got programs from Australia and newspapers from Australia, the fans just would never have seen, so even in what would be maybe not quite as fascinating to most fans as the early part of the book. Yeah, I think that there's something almost on every page that a fan will enjoy, and we've tried really hard for it not to be statty, even in the stat sections.
Can I just mention something there, Ben?
Go on, Roy.
There's a great point on what Dave's just made there, because
you're not gonna go into detail on Carl having his roadside wee, are you?
No, it's I love the tartan range of that time, Carl. There's some cracking pictures there. But the stats that we did on the players, there were 76 footballers who actually played in an official Manchester United match in the 70s, 77. And we've done bios of all 77, and 7 of them, Bestlaw and Charlton, and Stepney, Macari, Buchan, and McElroy. We've done extended bios. But I'm going to throw a name in here now that will probably most people will never have heard of, but it's called Peter Loughnane. Peter Loughnane. Now, Peter Loughnane played for Manchester United's first team 11 times, but he is not in that player statistics, because the 11 games he played was on the World Tour Dave's just mentioned, where he went to Indonesia, Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand. He played about 7 or 8 games there. He played against Celtic in a friendly. He played against Red Star Belgrade in a friendly. So he played in 11 first-team games for Manchester United. But on his official biography, he hasn't got any appearances. And yet a guy called Jimmy Kelly came on for 40 minutes as a sub against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the league, but he will be in the player profile. So, that's the interesting world of stats and everything.
Can I just jump in with something as well I found fascinating, was the games that a lot of fans may not know about or have forgotten about, or kind of go, oh my God, yeah. Well, home games that you weren't playing at home. So you had a game at Anfield against Arsenal, you played at Stoke, and there was like the Saint-Etienne game that you had to go down and play in Plymouth. Yeah. And they were United home games where you didn't play at Old Trafford. And, I don't really want to go into the reasons why you didn't play them there, but, it was obviously troubled times on the terraces. But it showed you that, it was, again, sort of unheard of. You wouldn't expect to see that now.
Those were the days that they used the closed circuit television. The game at Saint-Etienne played at Plymouth Argyle because there was trouble in France for the away game. You had to play over 200 miles away from Old Trafford. But that game was televised live back at Old Trafford on massive screens, which was a voyeur in those days.
I was going to say the other great thing I think about this book is you get the Youth Cup, so you get the Youth League statistics in there, but also the Central League as well. Yeah. Just quickly, Carl or Roy, it's up to you who you want. Can you just quickly give like a 60-second explanation for anyone out there who potentially isn't familiar with what that was?
But the Central League?
The Central League.
Yeah, the Central League, I actually wish it was back now, because they've got the under-21s or under-23 league. But the Central League, they play 42 games, 42 competitive games. And, players who come back from an injury would play. I mean, nowadays, you've got these massive squads, and players are not playing. I mean, Henderson, the goalkeeper, for example, or Heaton, they sat on the bench for 38 games, effectively. They don't play a reserve game. People that come back from injuries, they don't play a game in the reserves. It's sat on the bench. So the Central League was
If you weren't in the first 11 in those days, you played in the Central League, you'd be playing in the reserves. So Donny Van de Beek,
no substitute, one substitute.
In the reserves, he wouldn't be sat on the bench, and Henderson and the like. There was one sub. So a squad of 22, 11 players played on Saturday for the first team, and another 11 played in the Central League. Effectively, that was the squad between those two competitions. Effectively,
amazing.
And of course, one of the features in there, and the token sheet, one of the features a lot of people will remember too. You could go to the Central League or the youth team games for the special tokens. which were like gold dust, and collecting those tokens was the thing that got you a cup final ticket. And so we used to get 15,000 at reserve games on a Tuesday night. People going partly to see the youth team or the reserves, but to get the token that they needed to get the cup final ticket, and that's another memory. 15,000 at a reserve game on a Tuesday night.
I think we spoke about I don't know if it was called the Central League then, but I just remember familiar like in my head, Roy, it's just come to light when we were talking about the Babes and the Babes second teams and how the atmosphere and people attending the games would be just as many as attending the first team games. And often they'd run from being a substitute or playing to then going and playing again. I mean, what a tradition. I mean, that's what football's all about, right? Playing. As long as you're on that football pitch, that's all that matters. And look, let's go around the board now and just to cap this off. Dave, that's what this book is all about. Being a Manchester United fan in the 70s, and that's how this book is told, isn't it?
Yeah, as I said, I think fans of all ages will get something out of this. I mean, I think most of the people that will buy it will be fans of a certain age, ones that remember it, and people buying it for the dad and the granddad and their great grandmum for Christmas that will sit there and lose days probably wallowing in nostalgia in their youth. But even for modern day fans that have been brought up on just Premiership only, it's good to know your history. You've got to be proud of your history of your football club. The fact that United are one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world, is because of what went before it. And I think as character building, and I think it's also the success that you had in the late 70s and through the 80s and into the 90s was because of probably because you had that sort of slap on the wrist, you had that smack bum, you had that relegation, and it set standards. You don't want to go there again, and I think it was a wake up call. And I'm pleased that we've kind of been able to include that. Obviously, you won't want to be included in the 80s and the 90s, and probably relegation won't come your way again. But it's a special book, and I'm very proud that Legends have published it, and I've been able to work with Roy and Carl. It's one of the finest pieces of work I've ever produced.
Carl, one of the finest pieces of work that Dave's produced. Lovely words there. I mean, reactions to that, but also the 70s for you, putting this together. You've obviously been responsible for a number of incredible things when it comes to United's history and publication, the lot. So for you, what was it like putting this together? What was it like reliving the 70s?
It was a joy because it was a special era for me. It was when I first started going, and you don't forget those initial memories, really. So I wanted to capture, and I really do think we have, in the combination of all the match reports, but particularly all the images and the nostalgia in there. I wanted to capture the feeling, the joy of being part of United and the Red Army in those days, and I really hope that we did that. And in part, without getting too emotional about it, I'm very grateful to my dad who took me in those days, and 3 of my brothers home and away. So it's partly a tribute to my dad for doing that, which would be, again, something that would be impossible to do these days, I think, unless you were a millionaire. But the joy and the upbringing that we had doing that, I hope we've captured that in this book, and other people can see that and share those memories and the joy that they had from that era.
Roy, same question to you. What was it like reliving the 70s?
Well, fun enough, Tuesday night I went out for a drink with a top mate of mine whose father played in the reserves when the Busby Babes. He was there at the crash, and I showed him the book. And hopefully I'm not bad company when we go out for a drink or whatever, but I can honestly tell you that he sat with the book in front of him in the pub, and we were talking all the way through, and he was turning the pages. He just could not put it down, and that's when it really hit home to me, just what with Dave's, Carl, and myself have achieved here. And I just hope that as many people as possible pick this book up. You mentioned it, Ben, as well, because you pick it up and you won't read it from cover to cover. You'll pick it up, you'll look at the pictures, you'll go back, you'll go forward, and it relives a decade that sums Manchester United up absolutely perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. And I think Dave perhaps should tell people how they can get it, because that's an important thing as well.
Now we're not going to do that. That's not why we're here.
No. Yeah. What do you, Ben? What did you when you opened it and you undid the box and what have you? What have you made of the book so far?
Oh, I loved it. So obviously it was a bit emotional for me, because obviously when we first were on doing this show, the day before I'd got told some really sad news about Barry Doc United, who we all know, and he wasn't very well, and I think you guys were echoing me on this. As soon as you mentioned Dave, I think you all sort of said to Ben, if you want someone in the book, have it in. And really at the moment I should have gone, oh, my dad's a lifelong Red, I want my dad in there. But no, immediately the first name I thought of, because of how well I knew Barry and the news he had told me, was, do you know what? I know how much that would mean to him. Can you put Barry's name in the book, please? And I knew you had done, and all this journey I knew you had done. But then when I got the book, the first thing I do, I've got to be honest, is I saw it and I was like, wow. Number one, I wasn't expecting it to be this big. I know it says the big Manchester United book of the 70s, but I wasn't expecting it to be this big. It's incredibly big. And it's like, when you get it, you know you've got a piece of history within your hands, because that's what it feels like. And that's the only thing that I can sort of say to that. And then I went to the back and I looked at the fans honours list and I saw some of the names, and I saw Barry's name there. And it was just amazing. I was like grinning, like I am now, grinning ear to ear. And Barry sent me a message, by the way, guys, as well. And he called me and he was in tears. This is the best. He said this is the nicest thing anyone had ever done for him, and this is because of you guys, because of obviously the guys behind the channel and all of us coming up with that idea for him. So I just want to quickly also say I am so grateful that you guys have put Barry's name in something that's going to be around forever. And everyone who's on that list as well, it's going to be around forever. And I think it's such an amazing touch that you've done that. So shout out to all of you, especially to Legends Publishing as well, for that idea, because I think it's incredible. There's so many names in this book, and it is a book that can be passed through generations and generations of Manchester United fans. And I think to have that honours list at the back is such an amazing touch there. So shout out to you guys on that. And that was quite emotional. But then I was flicking through it and the kids came in. And Mona goes, that's Manchester United. And I go, yeah, it is. And she went, is that Bruno? And I went, no, that's Jordan Best. Now I'll tell you how they're similar and I'll tell you how they're not. and I was flicking through and she was asking me a question, is that Viva Ronaldo? Because obviously I'm always singing the chants, aren't I? I'm watching games, etc. talking about footballers. So it was really nice to be able to sit there with my 3-year-old daughter and go, that's Bobby Charlton, that's George Best, like, and talk through all of these footballers and have those pictures there as well. So without getting into the nitty gritty and the work, obviously, that Carl and Roy have also done in articulating the match reports with, like I say, they're so perfectly written that it's so easy to gain information from, want to read deeper. And let's face it also, guys, as well, and this isn't to spend anyone's job out there who are authors and stuff like that. You can find out a lot now by going out there yourself and finding out more information about things. I think the fact in the way that you set up these match reports will also make people want to learn more. And I think that's what's beautiful as well. There's a lot of information in there that pulls you in. Anyway, I could go on forever and ever about this book. It's one of the best books, and I'm not a reader, and this is what's great about it. It is definitely one of the best books that I've had that tells a story about United's history. I absolutely love it. And I really would recommend it to anyone because, as I say, it doesn't daunt you or overwhelm you. It paints a perfect picture. And I feel like it's Roy or Carl down the pub telling me about these moments, like talking to me about these moments, like with then some more information around it. So yeah, sorry, I've gone on a long time there, but I personally, I absolutely love it. And I'm honored to have a copy. It's a great book.
It's great because, I mean, obviously, you know, it's been the best part of 3 years in the making, and it's only now when you start sharing it with people that you kind of like, you want to know what they think of it. Obviously, you want people to buy it, but you want people to love it. And from all the feedback that we're getting so far, people are loving it. And, you know, that is one of the best feelings in the world. That's you put your heart and soul into something and then people fully understand. You know, it's not just a churned out pamphlet. This is, I'd say, a work of art. And I'm glad you love it, Ben. I'm glad you love it.
No, I agree. That is how I'd sum it up as well. I wouldn't say this is an encyclopedia of United in the 70s. I would say this is a piece of art because of the way it's put together, the way you digest it, and the pictures. The pictures are phenomenal as well. So yeah, it's a fantastic book. And I would say to anyone out there, if you do, and look, this is aimed at all ages, but if you do have a dad or an older relative who you know actually lived through the 70s, this is actually it's a perfect Christmas present for them. It really is. I know it's really cheesy for me to say it like that, but honestly, they will love it. They will absolutely love it. So I just want to put that out there as well to people if you're thinking about that. But no, fantastic. Roy and Cole, honestly, you guys are incredible. Congratulations. It's an amazing book. And congratulations, Legends Publishing, as well, for getting this out there. It's a great read. And I've been so lucky that I've got to sit down with all three of you twice now to talk about United in the 70s. So maybe we'll do it again and we'll go player specific or a couple of players specific and continue chatting about such an incredible era for United, because I think we need to keep talking about it.
Cheers, Ben.
No worries. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the invite, Ben.
If you want to get a copy,
head over
to www.legendspublishing.net, and it's on the homepage. Just scroll down, you'll see the Man United book there, or go to Amazon, and it's there as well. So enjoy the book, and thanks, Ben, for having us on. It's been an honor again. Thank you.
My pleasure. We'll get the link in the description. We'll tweet the link out as well. So make sure you grab the book. I just want to say one thing to end the show. Obviously, I've got to reflect on now times are tough for United. The 70s was a tough time for United with relegation as well. But there's been a chant in the Red Army stands recently that they've been singing. And I think it very, very much sums up United coming out the other end of the 70s. We've seen it all. We've won the lot. We're Man United, and we're never going to stop. And that's just not relevant for the 60s, for the 70s, for the 80s, 90s, but it's relevant now as well. Thank you for watching. Keep subscribing, keep liking the videos, comment with your favourite memories from the 70s. I'm sure Roy and Cole would love to see them. Follow these guys all online. Grab the big Manchester United book of the 70s. We're out of here. Take it easy, guys. Stay safe, everyone, and thanks again.
Cheers. Thank you. Cheers, Ben.
Bye.
Cheers, Ben.
Bye.